Hello, and welcome to the Lore of Braunhaven. Today, we're going to talk about the races and start this series about the races, how they interact with one another in the Braunhaven campaign setting. And so we're going to start this off with, of course, talking about humans, and in conjunction with that, we'll also be talking about halflings, because halflings and humans are really inextricably linked together, really. You can't really talk about one without the other because they spend so much time close to one another. Um, so with humans, and of course, humans being the shortest lived of all the races um, in the Braunhaven region, or really anywhere in the world, um, and halflings being second shortest living by a bit. Um, Humans come in all shapes and sizes. They can be found literally all over the entire known world, and it is important to note, if you remember when we were talking about the gods, it has been brought up a couple of times that humans and halflings both were kind of the creation and the children of the goddess Tula, who is the mother goddess, goddess of grain and livestock, and goddess of brewing and the harvest, and she is the patron mother of humans and halflings, which is one reason why the two are so linked together. Now, with like I said, humans can be found everywhere. They spread probably a bit even more than Tula would have expected, and in some cases more than she would have desired. I would say that, like, a lot of offspring, humans may have been a bit of a disappointment to Tula, because she is very kind, and in a lot of cases, humans have not carried that kindness with them into the known world. Um, but here we are. So humans, they are, of course, the most prolific of all the races. They have the highest fertility rate among the races, with, of course, dwarves being the lowest fertility rate, followed by gnomes. Dwarves and gnomes historically have a lower fertility rate than just about anybody else, but humans are like cockroaches or a virus. They are literally everywhere. And so the continent that Braunhaven sits on in the Glaucian Empire, along with the countries of Stagina and Erebachia and everything that takes place in between there, which I haven't even explored yet, is called the continent of Zandamar. And so people from that region are typically, I mean, if they don't know a particular location that they're from, they are just referred to as Zandamarians. People from Orentis may refer to people as Zandamarians because they don't know the geographical layout or the geopolitical layout of the continent. Of course, Erebachia is the home of Erebachans. They are of a dusky skin, dark complected features. Usually, they have a black or brown hair. Brown eyes is very common, though. There are cases of blue and green eyes, and even in some individual gray eyes, which can be a little disconcerting. They tend to be slender with a very muscular build, and that isn't necessarily because they are Boschian. It's because of their locale and the harsh desert environment and how they have to eke out a living, and so they tend to be of a slender, muscular build. Of course, the more wealthy you get, Erebachsians can be a little bit out of shape. Wealth breeds comfort, and so that is common. Stygianians, Stygianians are a peculiar people. So they come from the far reaches of the north, on the western side of the Skelos mountain range. And humans in the north are actually the minority. I mean, there's a lot of them, but they are really the minority. The standard Stygian, when people think of a Stygian, is they think of the Gargantua or half giants, which are close relatives. They are close cousins to humans, but they are far enough removed to, and of course their size, they are far enough removed that they become their own race. But humans from Stagina are really known throughout the world really for their seafaring skills. Every Stygian, whether he's a human or a Gargantua, starts at level 1 with the seafarer's secondary skill, and then they get to pick they get to roll normally for their secondary skills. But all Stygians have seafarer, and they are known for fair skin. Their hair colors range from blonde to red. Brunettes are a little bit fewer than that. Eye colors are almost always blue or green, but there are, again, some browns. They are typically powerfully built. The human male Stygian usually is going to be 6'2" to 6'6" in height. Now, of course, the Gargantua average 7.5 feet, maybe 8 feet tall for a male. So, like I said, humans they're not treated as second-class citizens in Stagina by the Gargantua, but they are a minority. But in in the barbarian tribes of the north, they're intermixed, but humans are the minority for Stagina. And then across the Dragon Sea, you have Orentis and the Orentians. The Dragon Sea is so large that many people, many years ago, centuries ago, they believed that the Dragon Sea was nearly endless. That's not the case. It is a really, really big ocean, though. But the Orentians are experts at navigation and sailing. They also start with the seafarer skill. They are of a slight build. In a lot of cases, Orentians might actually be mistaken for elves. Except for the fact that they generally have an olive complexion. Their hair tends to be black or brown, and brown eyes are very common in almost nearly 100% of their culture. That you don't see blue eyes or green eyes generally. They are all dark colored eyes and generally hair. If you do see a differing color of hair, then they are dyeing their hair. I mean, they are almost always black or brown. The bulk of your humans, of course, in a Braunhaven campaign, at least right now, currently, are going to be of Zandamarian descent. So, Arabashians, Stygians, or that lot are going to be fairly typical. Even you could have an Orentian because of the trade ships that come to Arabashia. Perhaps they came up across the Eastern Tradeway, but the bulk of your people are going to be more of a Eastern European, Slavic type descent. Almost all the gods are worshipped, but it should be stated that Arabashia, Orentis, and even Stagina, there are a few exceptions where there are some new gods that aren't typically worshipped elsewhere, some odd pantheons and things of that nature. So following close on the heels, of course, of humans, you have halflings. And halflings don't have as much of a genetic difference like humans do, depending on their region. But there is some slight variation. So, halflings, of course, are known to be kind, gentle people. They really prefer farming and good food and strong drink, and you know, I mean, they prefer farming, but do they spend the whole day farming? Certainly not. They spend maybe a small fraction of the day farming, and the rest of their time they're drinking and eating and socializing. They are a very social people. Halflings are said to, when the question comes about, who did Tula create first, halflings or humans? And halflings always say it was humans that were made first, and then she created halflings so that humans would have something to bring joy into their lives. Halflings are a very joyous people. They are known for their cultivation of grains, livestock, fruits, vegetables. They have a fabulous love with pipeweed. And most of them also have a little bit of a love, and this really came from the humans, a love for Arabashian tobacco. And so halflings have actually cultivated the two together in the Braunhaven region. And they have produced a 50-50 mix that they sell called Shire Smoke. And that's quite common and popular at many of the taverns and inns across the Braunhaven region. And this was all of halfling design. Usually, you can get a small 1 ounce leather pouch of Shire Smoke at most taverns and inns for about 1 gold piece, or rather 1 cestus piece. And generally, halflings are not overly known for their bravery, but halflings tend, as far as physically, they tend to be naturally they're short, anywhere from about 4 feet to 5 feet tall. A 5 foot tall halfling is usually considered fairly tall, but they're 4 feet's about average, or 4 4 foot 3 is about average. Um, they are a little bit. They might seem a little bit portly, or perhaps a little dumpy. That's not to say that they are overweight, but they do appear to be a little bit pudgy, and this is just that's natural for halflings. They have large feet. They don't generally wear footwear. Their feet are large. They are covered with hair, or almost their hair's thick, almost like a fur on the tops of their feet. And the soles of their feet are very leathery and tough. So most halflings don't wear footwear. If they are traveling into a cold region, they might then pick up a pair of boots just to protect themselves. But most halflings go barefoot. And uh, generally, that is describing the general halfling that you're going to find in the Glossian Empire and the Braunhaven region. But to the east, towards Arabashia, in the desert regions, there are halfling shires as well. They tend to be a little bit more of a hardier folk, perhaps a little bit leaner, more muscular, darker complected, but their attitudes are often similar to the Braunhaven folk. They might be a little bit more reclusive because of their environment, but they're not. I wouldn't say aggressive in any way. They'll be a little bit more reclusive. They'll want to watch people from rocky crags or over the tops of dunes before they to determine their demeanor before they decide to invite them into their shire to share their food and drink with them. But generally, the world over, halflings are typically considered just very, very nice people. Unfortunately, because of that, if a region is run over by hordes or an invading army, it seems that the unfortunate side effect of that is that halfling shires are some of the first areas to I guess witness violence or be destroyed because of their welcoming nature. They are just too nice for their own good. Of course, with humans and halflings, this of course brings about the object of half races. Now, the half races, of course, are um, um, the most common would be half elves and, of course, half orcs. And the two of them are they come from very different places. Half elves, of course, come about due to the close proximity in a lot of cases that humans and elves work together. And I mean, sometimes relationships just happen naturally. Usually, it is seen as um, a elven father and a human mother. That while that's not 100% of the time, that is the most common pairing. Occasionally, you may see the reverse of that, but usually those pairings are with the father being of elven descent. The other most common of the half races, of course, are half orcs, and um, ain't no human gonna go willfully marry an orc. That's not the way it happens. The most prevalent orc tribe are the Rock Skull orcs in the Braunhaven region. There are many, of course, other tribes located around the world and across the continent of Xandamar, but in the Braunhaven region, the most popular or common are Rock Skull. They orcs themselves, they their leadership, they're not necessarily dumb, and so they have come to the realization that um, they really are fighting a war of attrition. Um, and they lose for every small gain, especially in territory. They lose far more orc soldiers than they can really afford to. And the solution that they have come up with, of course, is that, and this was gleaned through their shamans in prayer to the goblinoid god Garush. They have come to the realization that one way of doing this is if your enemy starts to look like you, then they will eventually not be your enemy anymore. And this is the age old story of warfare across the world since history began, probably before history began. Um, that this is why you don't just pillage. Your soldiers have their way in the village, and then 9 months later, babies are born, and eventually that population starts to look like you and starts to agree, or the thought processes will start to agree with your ways. And this is very much part of the strategy of the orc tribes. And so you have a bunch of I wouldn't say a bunch, but they're not uncommon. Half orcs running around. Now the problem, of course, for half orcs is that neither parent wants anything to do with them. Human parents tend to uh, shun the child for obvious reasons, and the orc parent, if they are left with the orc tribes, they are treated as second-class citizens. They are abused, and in most cases, if those that do survive in the orc tribes, they end up running away and leaving. And the same, not that they are abused to death. I mean, I'm sure that happens. But not that they are abused to death. But in the human villages, they get old enough, they just get tired of it, and I'm leaving, mom. I don't have to put up with this, and they take off. Of those half orcs, many of them do become bandits or join brigands, things of that nature. So most of the human villages and towns really have a questionable look of about um, what a half orc um, is. The immediate thought is that they are bad, or they are a bandit, or they are a brigand, and that may not necessarily be true. Now, of the other half races, another common one, especially across in the Braunhaven region, usually coming from the capital city of Glaustein, are tieflings. And this, of course, goes back to the War of the Heavens, or the Coming of the Three, rather, the three archdevils that took over the known world. They and their devil armies were quite prolific, and the outcome of that, of course, were tieflings. Now, tieflings, more often than not, are going to be of the chaotic alignment, but not always. I mean, I can't think of any case as of yet where is a lawful tiefling, but they do tend. There are some cases of neutral tieflings, but almost, I would say, probably 80% of the tieflings you run into are going to be of chaotic alignment. And so, for a similar reason, outside of the city of Glaustein, most human settlements view tieflings with distrust. Not quite to the point of wondering if they're going to murder them the way that they would look at, half-orcs, but the immediate thought of the average human peasant or townsperson is going to be one of suspicion, wondering what the tiefling is actually up to, because they immediately think that there is some machination or scheme that this tiefling is attempting to garner, and they are not to be trusted. And of course, in some cases, that may be entirely wrong. There are adventurers that are tieflings, but they are far more rare than your half-orcs or half-elves. From Arabasia, some things, because of the deals that the devils made towards towards Arabasia and the desert region there. The devils had made some deals with the Jinn, and so what you end up with there are half Jinn, and the half Jinn. I'm trying to remember their name. I have not fully detailed them yet, but I want to say that they are the Qatar, and they are. Oh, I'm sorry. They are, yeah, the Qatar. They are pairings between Jinn or Afridi and humans. Now, how that works, that's a good question. It just is, okay. That's just how it's magic. And so these half Jinn, they're not necessarily looked on as badly as, say, the tieflings are, but there are suspicions, not of the wary sort, but of the we have to be careful because Jinn are not always seen as either good or evil. More that you don't want to get in between them, or you don't want to accidentally put your foot into one of their schemes and get tangled up, because that's going to be a whole slew of mess for you. And so half Jinn, they might be looked upon as suspicious from there. But the other thing to note is that in a lot of the religious societies from Arabashi, especially among the dervish, the Qatar are brought in and really embraced, especially those that are the Jinn, air, water. Air and water are particularly popular in the dervish communities. They are not necessarily worshipped, but they usually hold a high position, such as a cleric or something of that nature. So those are the races that we're dealing with here. In I'm sorry, there was one last half race, and that of course is the Gargantua, which we've already touched on. They are half giants. They every Stygian Gargantua that you talk to is going to tell you part of their lineage. They are very proud of it. Like, oh, there's fire giant on my mother's side, or there's frost giant on my great grandfather's side of the family. They bring this up in passing to newcomers almost constantly, and nobody's going to argue with them because I mean you're talking to some dude who's like 7.5 to 8 feet tall. I mean you can pretty much see that yeah, there's probably giant in there somewhere. Like I said, they are very close cousins of humans, but they are uh, differentiated enough that they are separated slightly. So those are the races, the humans, halflings, and half races of the world. And next time we will be getting into the elves, and the elves. There's a lot of elves. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.